Before we dive into color theory and the psychology of color, I want to first show you how you can use paint in perhaps an unexpected way to dramatically change the way an entire room looks and feels. What I'm going to share with you is a common technique that we designers use all of the time in our room designs, and it has to do with the fifth wall of a room, or as people commonly refer to it, as the ceiling. Now, unless you're a designer, it's pretty common to not give a second thought to our ceilings. Instead, our ceilings are often left white since the day that they were installed. But this is such a missed decorating opportunity. Let me show you why. Go ahead and take a look at this formal living room that I've put together in Room Sketcher. This is definitely a pretty room all on its own, but you'll notice that I've left the ceiling white, which as we now know is pretty typical. But let's see what happens when we change the ceiling color. My first recommendation is to consider painting the ceiling 2 to 3 shades darker than your walls, assuming of course your walls are not white. In this case, the room has light gray walls, so take a look at what happens to the room when we paint the ceiling a dark gray color. I love it. It's definitely more dramatic without it being too dark. Would you agree? Now that said, black is also a fantastic ceiling color. Now it's not for every room, but for many rooms, particularly formal living rooms, dining rooms, and home libraries, as long as you have black somewhere else in the room, because with black being such a strong color, you need to make sure the color is repeated throughout the room to properly balance it. Otherwise, it will simply feel jarring and out of place. In this example, you can see that we have black in the coffee table and in the console table. So look at what happens to the room when we paint the ceiling black. Wow, totally different and definitely dramatic. Now, because it's so dramatic, I would recommend adding in some additional black elements to help balance out that strong ceiling. So I'll go ahead and swap out the crystal table lamps for some black lamps and add in some black throw pillows. There. Now that works well. So now that you've seen what happens to the room when we paint the ceiling a few shades darker than the walls, and also what happens when we use black, now let's take a look at the room when we paint the ceiling using an accent color from the room. In this case, blue is a color we see in the painting, the pillows, the rug, and the bowl on the coffee table. So let's look at the room with a similar blue ceiling. That is beautiful. I love that blue ceiling. What do you think? More importantly, do you see how simply painting this one element in the room changes the entire look and feel of the room? So simple and so underutilized. But now that you know, you can use this fun designer technique as well in your own home. That said, there are a few guidelines I would like to share with you. First, as you might intuitively know, I would recommend that you not use a non-neutral color like blue, for example, for every ceiling in your home. That would be way too much. Reserve these bright hues for just a certain room or rooms where you really want to make a strong impact. Use some sort of neutral for the majority of your ceilings. Second, if your walls are already a dark or a medium color, then I wouldn't recommend using another dark color on the ceiling. But to avoid the standard white, use a color that is 2 to 3 shades lighter than your wall color. This still creates fantastic visual interest. Third, I would keep the ceiling color the same throughout most of the home and only vary the ceiling color in a few rooms at most. Finally, apart from paint, consider using wallpaper on your ceiling in lieu of paint, as this can be equally dramatic and definitely beautiful as well. My hope is that you now never forget about the amazing fifth wall potential in each of your rooms, and that you use one of these techniques that you just learned to help take your room to the next design level.